Okay, lecture 2. So, what are the project phases in HCM? The first one is requirement gathering, very important. This is where basically you actually sit down and understand with the client what the current processes are being run in HCM, in their HR department, how HR is integrated and operating within the organization, how deep their processes are for payroll, for hiring, for training and development, for research, for outsourced and contractual employees, and how the organizational structure is designed. And based on that, of course, you actually gather every kind of information that you can get hold of in the form of interviews, surveys, inspection, investigation, and close analysis. Okay, and you go through their documents as well. You go through speaking with the people, with the stakeholders, with the workers, with the employees, with the department heads. So this is a long process. I mean, it takes about like 4 months, 5 months, and that might be less. And of course, once you are done with your requirement gathering, you actually settle down with the clients to understand how many people will be running the HCM module in SAP in that organization. And for that, of course, you actually sit down and prepare uh, the organizational hierarchy of the people of the workforce who shall be using the SAP HCM module. Okay. And that will actually decide who will be the super user, the power user, the end user, the consultants. And then the company will actually proceed to buy the licenses, but not very soon. And then comes in the next part, that is compatibilities and the non-compatibilities in its HCM SAP with and along with the organization's processes and business missions. Okay, if a business process and business entities are not aligned somewhere in SAP HCM, that means if there is no solution for a certain set of processes, then that process is called a gap. And for that gap, the HCM consultant has to sit down with the client and with the technical consultant of SAP to bring out a solution. I mean, for that, of course, you need technical knowledge as well to advise the client and the consultants and the teams to know where HCM integrations will be needed for that very business process, which is not found as a solution in SAP. Okay, when all these three areas are covered, I mean, this will take like 3 to 4 months. And after that, when you've compiled everything and documented every nook and corner of that organization, of their hierarchies, of their people and processes and results and reports, everything, when it is documented, it becomes a blueprint. But in the blueprint, of course, you also advise how SAP processes will be mapped with the requirements of the organization. Okay. Once that blueprint is prepared, then the blueprint is basically passed on to the client and the stakeholders and the business process owners to verify it, to check it, and endorse it, and approve it or disapprove it or reject it altogether, or suggest changes where needed. Once the blueprint goes through that phase, finalization phase, then comes in where the senior consultants like you, like us, will actually sit down and we will write specification for each process. That specification will also show what are the processes and how those processes will be configured in SAP. And this is also usually achieved by SAP Solution Manager. That is a tool, a very powerful tool. Okay. The real thing is, of course, requirement gathering. This is where the consultant's expertise is basically highlighted. Okay, it comes to the front. Okay, gathering requirement, mapping requirement. This is basically the expertise. Okay, this is basically where the consultant actually finds gaps maps the processes, and this basically is how you actually manage a project. So it is not rocket science. So once that is in place, configuration plus technical configuration, this is the part of the consultant to actually highlight those areas with configuration paths and T codes. Okay, that we'll see. So moving forward, there are two aspects in SAP project. Okay, business object, which are business processes, functional processes of the business, which are to be mapped in SAP, and then technical objects, which is related to the customization and reports, and which is has to do quite a lot with the coding of at the back end of SAP. Okay, so functional objects are stored in different package. What are packages? I'll show you that in SAP. Technical objects are stored in a different package. Okay, so talking about SAP as a software. Okay, then let's see what is basically a package. For package, let's go to SC93. Now, package, basically, when we talk about a package, SC11.
Okay, sounds good. Did you get my email there? Yes, it was in our. No, in the package.
Workbench overview, SC8. Object navigator. This is just for the understanding. It's not yet so very necessary to get an understanding of this, but it's just to give you a flavor right now. Okay. Over here, the package. We're talking about a package. What is this package? Before we understand what is a package, let us understand what is the landscape of SAP. SAP has three servers: development, QA, PRD. In development, all the configuration testing of every process is done, and that is passed on to QA. How it is passed on? It is passed on through this package. Okay, and this is transported. How? It is transported like this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, over here, if you look at this list that you will see over here, okay, we have, for example, this is a company called T59X, Bulls and Bears, and okay, this is how actually you are configuring. This is the functional configuration of finance, and this is basically stored in one place. That is stored in this folder. Now, this basically is the package that we will be transporting to the QA. Okay, to the QA. After it reaches QA, it is tested by the users, by the client, by the business process owners, and then passed on to PRD. The transportation of the package is done by the consultants. Okay, so there are testing teams. Authorizations are done. Testing with using testing scripts, and testing analysis is done. And then the UAT. This is the most critical part. UAT means user acceptance testing, and that is done along with the training. And then SAP requests are passed on to the PRD using these very folders. So if we actually look at this workbench, okay, and customizing. Workbench is for codes. Customizing is for functional objects, and this is for technical objects. Okay. Now, after that is done, then we start uploading all the data, legacy data, master data, transaction data into the pre-PRD and make the PRD. PRD is production. Production server is made ready, and that again, same packages are transported. Okay. And then once it is all reconciled by the legacy, by the client with the legacy system, then the production is made live with a date that is announced. Okay. So, basically, if we talk about SAP, okay, the architecture of the layers, it has basically three fundamental layers. That is database, application layer where all the configuration of all the modules is residing. And then we have the presentation layer where the user actually interacts. Okay. Now, what is SAP ERP ECC R3? What is R3? R in R3 means real time, and 3 is the architecture, that 3-layer architecture that I've actually mentioned. Okay. So the new dimension ERP is basically modules like CRM, HCM, supply chain, supplier relationship management. These are some new modules which can actually run independent of the R3 layers as well. Some are cloud modules as well. Okay. Now, let's go over our configuration part, SPRO. Okay, and let's actually head down to our HCM configuration, and I'll just give an overview what is basically how HCM configuration nodes actually look like. I mean, there is a deep configuration landscape of HCM. Okay, we have in personal management, we have organizational management, personal administration, recruitment, benefits, compensation, and so on. Employee self-service, employee interaction center. Okay, time management is another node. Time management is again equally very deep. Work schedules, plant data collection, shift planning, incentive wages, information system, and so on. Payroll, again, payroll is basically very deep. It actually caters to the standards of many countries. It caters to like 25 to 30 countries all in one place. So that's how powerful it is. Okay. This is how actually SAP HCM actually manages international configuration. The big projects actually require 35 consultants. Okay. Because if you're talking about payroll of Argentina, it will be big enough compared to the payroll of Australia, which will be big enough, but payroll Australia will require another set of configuration. And of course, the team of the consultants will be huge as well. Okay. So that being said, if you look, okay, let's go to the next part, that is the front end. Front end will be /N. Human resources, personal management. Okay. In personal management, we have the nodes over here. Personal management, admin, personal management, admin, HR master data, and PA30. This is where we actually maintain and create the master data of our workforce. And workforce will be either contractual or permanent or advisors or retiree or active. That we'll see how we can actually go about that. Okay. Okay, let's see if we have a record, and then we'll actually wrap up our lecture for today, because this lecture was actually meant to give a little bit of flavor in HCM. Okay. Okay. Felix Jr. Okay, personnel number is 200. I press enter. Okay, if you see these areas, these sub areas, info types, basically info types are the heart and soul of HCM. Okay, these 4 info types are filled in. Let's double click organizational assignment and display it. Okay, Now the company code is best way group, personnel area is best ways. Now what is personnel? We'll study that. Then sub area, then there is a sub area to personnel area, and that is sub area can be your office or your factory or your plant. Okay. What is employee group, employee subgroup? Okay. So in employee, of course, we have to configure all these nodes. Organizational plan, what is the position? Marketing manager, best way. Okay. What is the group? We'll also discuss this. Job key, organizational unit. We'll discuss all of this. Okay. So just to give you a flavor, what it is, basically how it is managed. Because when we get down into the configuration, you'll get an understanding. Speaking of personal data, let's double click that and see what is the personal data display. Okay, Mr. Felix Jr., birth date, nationality, country of birth, birthplace, marital status, each and everything is actually captured. Of course, we have quite a lot of options to capture every kind of details, corporate experience, personal, related to education, related to previous experiences. Everything can be captured over here. Okay. So SAP HCM is quite powerful in actually maintaining a strong central structure of HCM. So now this is the address info type, and you can have many addresses like emergency address, home address, hotel accommodation, place of residence, secondment organization, temporary residence, work location, and so on. Okay. So that is how you actually maintain and run organizational structures using HCM. For today, this was our HCM lecture on organizational management and how SAP projects are executed.